The lights blazed across the studio, the air tense with anticipation. A special broadcast titled "The New Peace Plan, America and the World" had drawn millions of viewers. Former President Donald Trump sat confidently at the center of the stage, flanked by advisors and banners reading, "Trump Peace Initiative 2025. Across from him, Denzel Washington, stoic but visibly tense, adjusted his mic. He wasn't there for applause, he was there for truth. The host's voice echoed, "Tonight, a clash between vision and reality. Mr. Trump claims his new plan will bring lasting peace to the Middle East and restore America's global dominance. Denzel Washington has doubts. Let's begin." Trump leaned forward first, his tone calm yet commanding. "When I was president, we had peace. Now look, chaos everywhere. My plan will fix that." He gestured to the audience, his trademark bravado on full display. Denzel's eyes narrowed. "A plan is just paper without compassion," he said slowly. "Peace isn't made with cameras and applause, Mr. Trump. It's made with accountability." The crowd murmured, sensing the spark of something big. Trump smirked. "Accountability? You Hollywood guys love that word. You talk, we act." Denzel didn't blink. "You acted, all right, and millions paid the price." The silence after that line hit like thunder. The host tried to cut in, but the tension had already taken over. What began as an interview was about to turn into a full-scale confrontation, one the nation wouldn't forget. Trump leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms, his familiar grin masking irritation. "You know, Denzel, you've played a lot of tough guys in movies. But this isn't Hollywood. This is real life. You don't know what it takes to lead." The audience chuckled nervously. Denzel didn't flinch. He leaned in, voice low and steady, the kind that could silence a room without raising volume. "Leadership isn't about control, Mr. Trump. It's about conscience. And I've seen more heart from soldiers and single mothers than from men who call themselves strong leaders while dividing the world." Trump's eyes narrowed. "You're calling me divisive? I brought peace deals, historic ones. The world respected America when I was in charge." Denzel's response was immediate. "Respected? Or feared? Because fear fades, but respect endures. And right now, all I see is a man trying to rewrite history, not heal it." The crowd erupted, half cheering, half booing. The host tried to intervene, "Gentlemen, let's stay on topic." But Trump cut him off, voice booming. "You're defending the chaos created by weak leaders who failed America. I kept the world in line." Denzel's tone sharpened like a blade. "No, you kept people in silence. There's a difference. You called it peace, but it was just pressure, and when the pressure lifted, the truth came out." Gasps rippled through the studio. The host's eyes darted between them like a referee in a storm. Denzel leaned back, his voice calm again. "You can't build peace on propaganda, Mr. Trump. You can't sell empathy like real estate." Trump's smirk faltered for the first time that night. Cameras zoomed in, capturing his twitching jaw. The live chat was exploding. Hashtags like hashtag Denzel vs. Trump and hashtag Truth or Propaganda were already trending worldwide. The night had only begun. The tension in the studio was electric, the kind that hums just before lightning strikes. Every camera lens tightened on Denzel and Trump, two worlds colliding under hot stage lights. Trump jabbed his finger toward him. "You talk about truth like it's some kind of virtue you own. But truth is what leaders make it. I made America strong again. I kept wars from starting. You think that was luck?" Denzel's laugh was soft but razor-sharp. "Strength isn't the same as wisdom, Mr. Trump. You don't prevent war by ignoring pain, you prevent it by understanding it. You built walls, physical and emotional ones, then called it peace. That's not leadership, that's isolation." The crowd reacted instantly, murmurs, claps, a few boos. Trump turned toward the audience with his signature shrug. "Oh, here we go. Another actor preaching politics. Maybe next, you'll start running foreign policy from a movie script." Denzel didn't blink. "At least movie scripts have a moral arc. Real life, under your watch, didn't." The host tried to regain control, but Denzel pressed on, his tone deepening. When you silence dissent, when you use fear as fuel, when you treat truth as a brand, that's not peace. That's performance. Trump's face reddened. You think you know the world? You live in mansions, fly private, and talk about struggle? You've been playing heroes. I've been one. The room went still. Denzel's eyes locked on Trump's. Heroes don't call themselves heroes, Mr. Trump. The world decides that for them. And lately, the world's been deciding something very different about you. A ripple of shock ran through the studio, half the audience froze, half erupted. Twitter servers were choking under the traffic. Headlines were already being drafted mid-broadcast. Somewhere off camera, a producer whispered, "This just went global." Trump leaned forward, his voice dropping into a low, calculated growl. You think you're the voice of the people, Denzel? You're just another Hollywood liberal pretending to care about a world you don't understand. Denzel didn't flinch. Pretending? The people I grew up with, they don't see peace in your speeches. They see struggle, hunger, and fear sold as strength. You call that leadership? Trump's hand slammed the table, the sound echoing like a gavel. I call it reality. You think peace comes from weakness? The world respects power, not pity. Denzel's tone sharpened, but his composure remained. Then why is it that every time you talk about power, someone else loses theirs? You talk about peace, but your policies profit from pain. You shake hands in front of cameras, then turn your back when the lights go out. The audience gasped. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was exposure. Trump smirked, leaning back. You've played so many roles, maybe you forgot which one you're in now. This isn't a movie, Denzel. This is politics. Denzel's eyes darkened, the calm before the storm. Exactly. And politics shouldn't be theater, but you turned it into one. Every rally, every speech, every headline, scripted chaos. You talk peace while dividing the nation. You say, America first, but you mean, truth last. Trump pointed across the table, his voice cracking through the tension. You don't love this country. You love the sound of your own voice. Denzel stood slowly, his shadow stretching under the studio lights. No, Mr. Trump, I love this country enough to tell it the truth, even when it hurts. Peace without justice is just silence. The audience rose to their feet, not clapping, not cheering, just standing, as if witnessing a historic moment they didn't fully understand yet. Cameras zoomed in, news outlets scrambled for headlines. For the first time in his career, Trump looked like he'd lost control of the room. The studio had gone still, as if the air itself was holding its breath. The red recording light glowed like an unblinking eye, capturing every tremor, every glance, every unspoken truth that now filled the space between Denzel Washington and Donald Trump. Trump adjusted his tie, forcing a grin that looked more like armor than confidence. You're good with words, Denzel. You always were. But speeches don't pay the bills. My policies do. Denzel crossed his arms, eyes fixed on him. Policies that build walls instead of bridges? You call that peace? You call that leadership? Trump leaned back, his voice booming. I call that strength. The world's laughing at us, and you want to hand out hugs? The audience murmured, the tension in the room thickened. Denzel waited for the noise to fade, then spoke with quiet conviction. Strength isn't crushing others to prove your worth. It's lifting people up, even when it costs you power. You talk about peace like it's a show, a brand, but real peace doesn't come from deals or headlines. It comes from humanity. Trump waved him off, scoffing. Spare me the sermon. You've made millions pretending to be heroes. I built empires by being one. Denzel took a slow step forward. Empires fall, Mr. Trump. But legacies, they live or die by truth. And history doesn't remember who shouted the loudest. It remembers who stood when silence was easier. For a brief moment, Trump faltered, his smirk fading, his composure cracking just enough for the cameras to catch it. The moderator's voice trembled as he tried to regain control. Gentlemen, please. But the moment was already immortalized. Clips would flood social media within minutes. Hashtags would trend. The world would watch, argue, dissect, but one thing was certain, a line had been drawn. And Denzel Washington, standing tall and unshaken, had just crossed it, dragging the truth into the spotlight, whether Trump liked it or not. The air in the studio was electric, charged with the kind of tension that only comes when truth meets pride on live television. Trump's hands gripped the edge of the desk, his knuckles turned pale. Across from him, Denzel remained steady, shoulders squared, eyes sharp but calm. The silence was louder than any applause. Trump finally broke it. "You sit there and preach like you know politics, like you've been in the trenches," he barked. "You're just another Hollywood elite, pretending to understand the real world." Denzel leaned forward, his tone low, every word landing like a weight. "The real world is where mothers bury their sons because of policies written by men who've never known struggle. Don't talk to me about reality, Mr. Trump. I've lived in it. I've seen what power without empathy does." The audience gasped. Trump blinked rapidly, searching for a counterattack. "You think you can shame me on my own stage? You're the problem, people like you, always talking, never doing." Denzel's reply came soft but sharp. "Talking is doing when it forces people to listen. You built your empire on noise, I'm trying to build a conscience." For a heartbeat, neither man moved. The moderator glanced nervously toward the camera crew, signaling to cut to commercial. But no one dared. The control room froze, the director whispered, "Keep rolling." Trump exhaled, shaking his head. "You don't love this country," he said bitterly. "You love to blame it." That was when Denzel leaned back, almost smiling. "No," he said quietly. "I love this country enough to tell it the truth." The audience erupted, not in cheers, not in boos, but in the unmistakable sound of awakening. The kind that spreads through living rooms, headlines, and hearts. The camera zoomed in on Denzel's face, calm, fierce, unyielding. Across the table, Trump's expression hardened, his jaw set. This wasn't politics anymore. It was accountability, and it was live. The moment the broadcast ended, the world ignited. Social media exploded like a digital wildfire, clips of Denzel's final line flooded every platform. "I love this country enough to tell it the truth." Those words echoed from newsrooms to street corners, becoming the pulse of a restless nation. Cable networks ran the replay on loop. Conservative pundits called Denzel's remarks an orchestrated ambush. Liberal commentators hailed it as a masterclass in moral courage. Hashtags like #TruthOverPower and #Denzel vs. Trump trended worldwide. Inside Trump's camp, chaos brewed. Advisors scrambled to contain the damage, spinning statements about Hollywood propaganda and leftist manipulation. But behind closed doors, aides whispered that Trump had been caught off guard, that, for once, the script didn't go his way. Meanwhile, Denzel's phone was flooded with messages, from journalists, activists, even veterans thanking him for speaking up. He read only one before turning off the screen. "You said what we've been too afraid to say." The following morning, every major outlet carried the same headline in some form. Denzel Washington challenges Trump live, a nation divided over truth. Trump, unaccustomed to silence, broke it with fury. At a rally that night, he thundered from the podium, "Some actor thinks he can lecture me on patriotism? He's just another hypocrite trying to look righteous." The crowd roared, but even his usual fervor seemed forced, his words no longer carried the same conviction. Back in Los Angeles, Denzel watched the rally replay. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't gloating. He just whispered, "Keep talking, the truth doesn't need a microphone." Outside his home, reporters waited for a statement. Denzel walked past them, calm as ever. "No more lies," he said simply, "from anyone." Then he stepped into his car, the door closing with the finality of a gavel. 3 days later, the storm that began in a studio turned into a national reckoning. The White House announced a surprise press conference. Trump was ready to set the record straight. The announcement alone sent every network scrambling. By the time he stepped onto the podium, millions were already watching. "Let me be very clear," Trump began, his tone defiant but weary, "I've done more for peace than anyone else." What Denzel said? Lies. Hollywood lies. He's just another actor reading a script written by the deep state. The room fell into tense silence. Reporters exchanged glances, unsure whether to laugh or brace themselves. Back in California, Denzel sat with a small group of friends, watching live. He didn't flinch, he'd expected this. When a journalist asked Trump about Denzel's accusation that his so-called peace plan was built on propaganda and political theater, Trump's expression hardened. "You call it propaganda," he snapped, "I call it leadership. He's an entertainer, I'm a leader." The clip was instantly viral. Within minutes, Denzel's publicist's phone lit up. Networks wanted his response. But instead of scheduling interviews, Denzel did something no one expected. He went live on his own. No stage. No studio. Just Denzel sitting in his study, speaking directly to the camera. "This isn't about fame or politics," he began, his voice calm but firm. "It's about accountability. If you lead a nation, your words shape the world. You don't get to lie about peace while profiting from chaos." Within minutes, his live stream crossed 20 million views. Even Trump's base couldn't ignore it. The contrast was stark, one man surrounded by lights and applause, the other sitting in quiet truth. And for the first time in years, it wasn't Trump's voice echoing across America. It was Denzel's. By the next morning, Denzel's live stream had eclipsed every major news cycle. The phrase #TruthOverPower trended in more than 40 countries. Commentators from Tokyo to London debated whether an actor had just become the most honest voice in American politics. CNN called it a speech that cut through propaganda like sunlight through smoke. Trump, furious at losing control of the narrative, doubled down. He appeared on Fox for a special interview titled "Setting the Record Straight." He leaned toward the camera, his voice rising. "Denzel's not fighting for truth, he's fighting for attention. He's another Hollywood elite who thinks he can tell America what to believe." But this time, his words didn't land. The camera caught the unease in his expression, the defensive twitch in his jaw. The country had seen this scene before, power cornered by truth. Meanwhile, journalists began fact-checking Denzel's claims. Documents leaked to The Guardian revealed portions of the so-called peace plan had been coordinated with private defense contractors, ensuring billions in future profits. Headlines exploded, "Profit behind peace," and "Denzel was right." When reporters asked Denzel to respond, he refused the spotlight. Instead, he released a short statement. "If telling the truth is considered rebellion, then maybe we need more rebels." It was simple, unpolished, and perfect. Late-night hosts quoted it, protesters printed it on signs, and even some conservatives admitted that Denzel had spoken what many were afraid to say. By sunset, a quiet shift was happening across America. It wasn't about celebrity versus politician anymore. It was about truth versus power, and everyone could feel which side was starting to win. The final debate between Denzel and Trump wasn't announced, it happened. A sudden live appearance on national television. The two men faced each other beneath blinding studio lights, no audience this time, just cameras and truth. Trump opened with thunder. "You talk like you know the world, Denzel, but you live in Hollywood. I've built cities. You've built scenes." Denzel waited. Silence was his weapon. Then, slowly, he leaned forward and said, "You've built walls too, not just between nations, but between people." His voice was low, controlled, but it hit like an explosion. For a moment, Trump froze. The cameras captured the flicker of surprise, the tightening of his jaw. He tried to fire back, but Denzel didn't stop. You call it leadership. I call it fear. You call it peace. I call it profit. The moderator stammered, trying to regain control, but the clip had already gone viral, millions watching live, millions more recording it. Across the country, bars, airports, and living rooms fell silent. It wasn't a debate anymore, it was history unfolding. Then, as Trump tried to pivot, Denzel delivered the final blow. You've convinced people that truth is their enemy. But the truth doesn't serve power, it exposes it. The words hung heavy in the air. Even the studio crew stopped moving. Within hours, headlines erupted. Denzel's truth bomb shakes the nation. Trump cornered by calm. America watches power lose its voice. That night, Denzel left the studio without a word. Outside, the crowd waited, not for selfies, but for something bigger, hope. In the days that followed, politicians, journalists, and ordinary citizens began echoing his words. Truth exposes power. It became more than a quote, it became a movement. And as the credits rolled on that chaotic week in America, one thing was certain: history wouldn't remember who shouted the loudest, but who finally spoke the truth. At the end of the day, Denzel's voice echoes softly as the lights fade. Truth isn't about who wins the argument, it's about who dares to speak when silence becomes comfortable. The studio falls quiet, only the hum of the cameras remains. For a moment, America seems to breathe again, the chaos, the lies, the noise, all paused by one man's calm conviction. Power builds empires, he continues, but truth builds nations. And with that, the screen fades to black. No applause. No outro music. Just the sound of a heartbeat, the nation's heartbeat, growing louder as the truth finally finds its voice.